Hey, thanks for joining me. Sometimes my mind gets so muddled when I'm working on articles and I'm trying to look up information on whatever I'm researching that sometimes I get so involved in that particular thing I was looking for that I forget the main issue of what's happening. So this is the same. This is what I came to with what I am working on with the Greece-Turkey issue. Yes, I brought up the other video, what was going on in Thrace, what's going on with the Aegean and all that. But I need to tell you that a huge event happening right now with Greece's announcement of expanding their coastal zone from 6 to 12 nautical miles. And so I was looking through some information, and there was this question I had, well, why did they wait to do this for so long? Because they have the legality to do this with their coastal waters and their islands. They sign the what was it called, United Nations UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. They signed that way back in Greece did way back in 1982, and it was enforced. July 21st, 1995. And as you know, once that was enforced, it was in 1995 that Turkey decided that they were threatened by that, or they didn't like it, and that's when they did that, the cause for war, that Casus Belli. This is cause for war, according to them. So this is interesting. Why, for over 30 years, has Greece not expanded their coastal zone? So that's one question I had. And then my other question is, this is St. Paisios' prophecy, okay? And a lot of people know that, and I kind of already knew that too, but even though I knew that, I guess I was just like, well, I wasn't really, sometimes it doesn't really go in my head that, hey, this is actually happening. It's actually happening. And so I'm going to be sharing his prophecy on that particular issue, just that one portion. And it came from Saint Cosmas of Anatolia, and he helped to interpret what it meant, translate what it meant. So this is an important thing I'm going to dive deeper into. Why did Greece do this, and how do we know it's the Aegean, these coastal water, is the trigger? How do we know it's not another body of water? Okay, that's questions I was asking. So let me go into the first thing, which is St. Paisios. He had said this. He explained to someone, when you will hear through TV being referenced the miles extension of coastal zone from 6 to 12 miles, then the war will come after and follow by, and then it gets into the other thing with the Russia-Turkey thing. The war will follow. What part of the war? I guess the Turkish Greece, or I assume that's what he's talking about because he's talking about Greece and Turkey, but let's just think about that. And the first question I had was, how do we know it is this? So I have an article I'm going to share that kind of explains all this and why Greece took so long. Okay. Greece announces expansion to 12-mile territorial waters, strategic reckoning in the Aegean. And this was announced by a foreign minister, Hera Petritus, Okay, so he had said that, and I actually reported that the other day. And this is by Nick Stamatakis. This is his take on what's been going on. Okay, this came out the 17th. He considers this a decisive, if long delayed, moment in the Aegean. Again, that question. Okay, why so long? Presented officially as a lawful and measured exercise of sovereignty, the move also exposes decades of strategic hesitation, selective application of international law, and the enduring impact of fear-driven policy. So he's going to get into what all this means. In previous years, especially in 1995, that's when that was enforced, that law of the sea. Under what can only be described as a phobic and risk-averse political leadership, that's what he's saying about the Greek leadership, Greece exercised its sovereign right to extend territorial waters only in the Ionian Sea, right? That happened a while back. On its western flank. Okay. This produced a globally unique and legally incoherent situation, a state applying international law, selectively expanding its sovereignty where there was no adversary reaction to fear. Okay? While freezing its rights where those rights mattered most. No serious maritime power behaves this way. The Aegean remained locked at 6 nautical miles, not because of law, but because of intimidation, and because Greek political elites mistook restraint for strategy. So the foreign minister invoked international legality and environmental planning to justify what should have been done decades ago, according to this author. So we get into the UNCLOS, as I said, Law of the Sea. Is legally sound, but politically hollow in a world where law increasingly follows power, not the other way around. And that world has changed dramatically. Yes, we can see that. After the latest geopolitical shocks emanating from Washington, particularly under Trump era and post-Trump transactionalism, the notion that international law constitutes a binding framework has become largely ceremonial. Yes. From Ukraine to Gaza to the Red Sea, rules are invoked selectively, enforced inconsistently, and abandoned when convenient. Yes, as we've seen, the U.S. and ISI do not follow international law. So, and it's on steroids right now. Okay, which gives the green light to any other country who wants to decide to move forward on some aggressive move can do so. Okay, so this is the strategic context in which Greece now finds itself. There is growing likelihood that the West will attempt one final maneuver to keep Turkey anchored within its strategic orbit, not through pressure or deterrence, but through mediation. This effort would likely take the form of encouraging Greece and Turkey to enter negotiations over the delineation of their exclusive economic zones. Such mediation, however, is unlikely to be grounded in the UNCLOS. Instead, Greece may be confronted with the legally corrosive and globally anomalous notion of so-called equitable distribution, a political construct designed to dilute treaty law in favor of power balancing. This concept has no basis in UNCLOS, no grounding in customary international maritime practice, and no precedent among serious maritime states. It directly undermines the fundamental principle that maritime rights derive from sovereign law, not from bargaining leverage or geopolitical convenience. Greece must reject this concept unequivocally. Okay? If the United States or its partners believe such a notion is legitimate, a simple question arises: why was equitable distribution never proposed when the United States delineated its own EEZs with the Bahamas, Cuba, and Mexico? or Mexico. Why is this flexibility never suggested in the South China Sea, where continental power borders multiple island states such as the Philippines and Taiwan? Is Greece somehow a different and lesser island nation than the Philippines? The selective resurrection of equity reveals its true nature. It's not a legal principle, but a diplomatic tool reserved for weak actors. In practice, equitable distribution is an invitation for Greece to trade legality for the illusion of stability. History is unambiguous on this point. Such exchanges never favor the state asked to surrender law in the name of balance. They merely postpone confrontation while institutionalizing disadvantage. So Turkey's strategic calculus, balancing, until it doesn't. Turkey, meanwhile, is playing a longer and far more coherent game. It will continue to balance between East and West, seeking the F-35s. It has already partially paid for, attempting a workable settlement in Syria with Kurdish actors, maintaining dialogue with Washington, Brussels, and Russia. But these are tactical moves, not strategic anchors. Turkey's structural interests lie to the east. Russian gas pipelines remain indispensable to its energy security. Chinese investments are deeply embedded in Turkish infrastructure and logistics. The emerging India, Israel, Greece strategic cooperation reshapes Eurasian connectivity in ways Ankara cannot ignore. Turkey is not drifting eastward, it is gravitating toward the east. With nearly 90 million people, a robust industrial base, and one of the most productive indigenous defense industries in the wider region, Turkey is not a state that can be disciplined, isolated, or subordinated. It will not accept permanent strategic containment, nor will it submit to. It will not accept U.S. ISI regional domination, especially as its own leverage grows. The 3+1 factor, Ankara's red line. So this is why the 3+1 framework, Greece, Cyprus, ISI, plus the United States, is viewed in Ankara with deep hostility, not as a diplomatic alignment, but as a containment architecture. Turkey does not oppose cooperation per se, it opposes exclusion, and exclusion accelerates realignment. Greece must choose reality over comfort. Greece now stands at a familiar crossroads. It can invoke international law while behaving as though it will be arbitrated away, or finally internalize the reality that law without power and resolve is merely narrative. Extending territorial waters in the Aegean is not an escalation. It is normalization delayed by decades of fear. So the answer, my question has been answered. Why 30 years have they not done this if they felt that it was something important in their security to do so? Fear. At this historic juncture, Greece should not be afraid of Turkey's Casus Belli, the cause for war. Greece's Air Force, with scores of updated F-16 Vipers and 24 Rafale fighters, is in control of the airspace over the Aegean. And the arrival of the new Belhara frigate, Kimon, enhances this control further. The likelihood of Turkey reacting militarily to Greece's expansion of its territorial waters to 12 miles is reduced significantly, so he thinks. Now remember, this is just his geopolitical position on this, his understanding. He doesn't take in anything about the prophecy. Okay, so with that information, I know some of my viewers have brought up that Greece has a much stronger military than I had said at that one point, or was inferring to that somebody had said, and it was a certain a certain elder, but it's slipped my mind again who it was. But in any case, here it's showing that yes, he thinks that that Greece has a strong enough military that the Air Force and all that Turkey won't be as likely to make this step. Well, we'll see. St. Paisios says differently. Now, but again, he says that the Turkish fleet only gets to the 6 nautical mile point. So, we'll see. The real danger lies not in Turkish reaction, but in Western solutions that ask Greece to compromise legality for illusory calm, while Turkey prepares patiently and methodically for a future that lies east of Europe. So they think. That's his take on this. So they waited this long out of fear. They didn't want confrontation, apparently. Greece didn't want confrontation. But now they're making this move. So they feel confident and strong enough now that they can do this. That's the way it's reading. We have a stronger military. We have our we have protection for our islands. We're able to do this. We can do this. We have the Cyprus, Israel, and us, Greece, this cooperation. We have, there's more there. They have more backing, okay? So maybe that's why Greece feels like they can do this. They figure, okay, this is now the time we can start putting this, doing this. And then, I think to myself, well, I will say that my thoughts on this, on the why it's the Aegean, because I asked, why do we think it's the Aegean? Because when I looked it up, the Ionian, as he said, there was no contention with the Ionian Sea. It's the contention is in the Aegean, which would cause this war. That is what Turkey is saying. We're going to go. This is a cause for war if you do this in the Aegean. So that's why the Ionian Sea. Well, it didn't really matter. There was no contention there. So, this is really important. I think sometimes, like I said, things are actually happening in real time, and let's not forget, Metropolitan Orthodox, he says what the Saint Paisios has said, and it's then, of course, Saint Cosmas. But what's important is that he says this will be, you'll hear this on TV or you'll read in the headlines, you'll see this. He didn't say it'll be when Greece actually implements this and does it. That is a key issue right there. He does not say, well, when Greece actually physically puts that into motion is when this war is going to start. No, he said, when you hear the announcement on TV from 6 to 12 nautical miles. That's it. And that's been done. So this is following right into the 2026 timeline here with what I shared with you the other day with Metropolitan Neophytus, saying this is going to be a year of conflagration, and the Great War is going to come about. After this year, or at least it's going to start. Apparently, let's not forget. Again, I'll remind you that there's the blood moon that's going to be coming up in March, if it did not start in September. All of the events, March 3rd and 4th. And then we have the E65 that connects to the Aegean Road, E65 highway, that's going to be complete between April and June of this year. And we still have the Russia-NATO issue and the Israel-Iran-U.S. conflict, because they've moved down to the Middle East, as has been said. A lot of things happening here, but this particular issue is very important because St. Paisios' words, prophetic words and warning, are unfolding before our eyes right now. We already had that event in June, the end of June in 2025, where Elder Basilius's words came to be, his prediction came to be, it was fulfilled. And now this. Sometimes it's surreal. It's hard to believe this is happening, but I hope you all, I hope I made this much more clear, the gravity of this situation. We need to keep up our prayers. We need to continue to ask God's mercy and to lessen what's to come. You know, keep vigilant, keep in prayer, keep going to liturgy, as the Metropolitan Neophyte has said. You know, keep at doing our Orthodox reading, prayers, church life, and repentance is paramount. Thanks so much for watching, for following my channel.